The door clicked shut. Imani turned and 6 girls stood there blocking her only way out. The bathroom on the third floor of Oak Ridge High was eerily quiet. The kind of place students avoided unless they wanted privacy or trouble. The walls were faded green, and the flickering fluorescent light buzzed above like a warning. Imani was new here. Just 5 days into her transfer, she had already sensed the whispers, the stares, the giggles behind her back. She wasn't dumb. She'd moved enough times to recognize what exclusion felt like. But this time, something about the atmosphere was heavier. She stood by the cracked mirror, adjusting her backpack strap and smoothing down the collar of her navy blue uniform. She was about to leave when she heard the unmistakable click of the door locking behind her. Imani turned slowly. 6 girls. All of them wore matching lip gloss, similar hair, straightened to perfection, and the same smug expression. Madison, their leader, stood at the front arms, crossed flanked by the others. Kayla, Brooke, Taylor, Lexi, and Serena. Imani knew some of their names from her classes. But this wasn't a welcome party. It was an ambush. Madison's voice was sweet, too sweet. "So new girl, you think you're better than us." Imani stayed silent. Her heart pounded. Kayla stepped forward. "You walk around with your little perfect curls, your polished shoes, acting all quiet and smart, like you're some kind of princess." Taylor scoffed. She probably thinks she's special because she raised her hand 5 times in English. Imani tried to stay calm. She'd heard worse before. At the last school, some kids threw gum in her hair. The one before that, they called her a charity case when they found out her mom worked 2 jobs. But this 6 girls in a locked bathroom was something else. "Move," Imani said, her voice steady. But Brooke stepped in front of the door. "You're not going anywhere." Madison took out her phone. "Actually, we wanted to make a little video. Something to welcome you properly to Oak Ridge. Just a few questions. Like, where did you get that second-hand uniform?" Snickers rippled through the group. Imani's eyes scanned the room. One stall was open behind her. A janitor's closet to the side. No window. No other exits. "I'm not playing your game," she said, stepping forward. Serena pushed her back lightly but deliberately. It wasn't hard enough to hurt, just enough to test. And that's when something changed in Imani's eyes. For a brief second, her body tensed, not from fear, but from calculation. Like something in her clicked into place. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked quietly. Madison smirked. "Oh, I'm sure." Brooke pulled out her phone. "This is going to blow up on TikTok." What none of them knew, what Imani hadn't told anyone yet, was that her father was a retired Army Ranger. He had taught her how to defend herself since she was 5. Not to attack, not to fight for fun, but to end danger when it came knocking. And today it had knocked. Serena lunged forward again. This time she reached for Imani's backpack. "Let's see what she's got in here." Probably books she doesn't even understand. Imani moved like lightning. She sidestepped Serena, grabbed her wrist, and twisted it just enough to make her drop the strap. The other girls gasped. "What the?" Serena shrieked, stumbling backward. Madison's grin faltered. But Kayla rushed in, shoving Imani hard. Imani caught herself against the sink. Her breath was calm, her stance grounded. Her hands open, not clenched, not panicking. Just ready. "I'm giving you one chance," she said firmly. "Let me leave." Taylor laughed. "Or what you gonna call your mommy?" Imani took a step forward. Brooke stepped aside just slightly. Her confidence was already cracking. "You've got 5 seconds to unlock that door," Imani warned again. Madison's voice rose. "Girls, don't let her walk away like she owns the place." Lexi moved in next. She grabbed Imani's wrist and tried to yank her back. Bad idea. With practiced precision, Imani dropped her weight low, pivoted her foot, and swept Lexi off balance. The girl landed flat on her back with a thud that echoed in the tight space. Gasps. Then silence. Imani turned slowly to face the others. Brooke froze. Taylor took a step back. Kayla cursed under her breath. Madison's face went pale. Imani didn't smile. She didn't threaten. She simply stood calm and composed. Last chance. And this time, Brooke didn't wait. She darted to the door and yanked it open. The hallway outside was empty, except for one girl standing frozen in shock. It was a freshman who had just come up to use the bathroom and witnessed everything from the cracked door glass. Seconds later, the girl ran down the stairs screaming, "Ms. Carter, Ms. Carter." Something's happening in the third-floor bathroom. Imani stood still as the other girls scattered like mice, some pushing past her, others storming out with their pride shattered. She didn't chase them. She didn't raise her voice. She adjusted her backpack, looked at her reflection once more, smeared slightly from the scuffle, and walked out into the hallway just as the assistant principal and two teachers came running up the stairs. Imani, one of them, called out. She paused. Yes, ma'am. The woman looked at her, then at the group of girls now huddled at the other end of the hallway. Some were crying. We need to talk. Imani nodded. Yes, we do. By the time Imani sat in the assistant principal's office, the chaos had already begun to echo through the school halls. Whispers buzzed like hornets. Did you hear what happened in the third-floor bathroom? She flipped Lexi. That new girl is crazy. No, she's a ninja or something. But inside the quiet office away from the noise, Imani sat upright in the chair, her face composed. Not cold, not afraid, just focused. Across from her sat Ms. Elaine Carter, the school's assistant principal. She was a tall, elegant woman in her 40s with silver streaks in her bun and a sharpness in her voice that could silence an entire cafeteria. She leaned forward, clasping her hands together on the desk. Imani, she said gently, you want to tell me what happened in there? Imani nodded. They lured me into the bathroom, locked the door, tried to humiliate me. Ms. Carter didn't interrupt. She just nodded slowly, letting Imani speak in her own time. They wanted to record me. One of them shoved me. Another grabbed my bag. I told them to stop. They didn't. And the physical altercation, Ms. Carter asked. I heard one student had to go to the nurse. I didn't hit anyone, Imani said, her voice clear. I just defended myself. There was a pause. Then Ms. Carter smiled faintly. Well, the security footage from the hallway confirms most of what you just said. The door was locked from the inside, and 6 girls came out crying while you walked out calm. That tells me a lot. Imani exhaled slowly. She wasn't used to adults believing her on the first try. Most of the time, they assumed the worst. Maybe she provoked it. Maybe she has an attitude. Maybe she's not used to our school culture. But Ms. Carter didn't do any of that. You're not in trouble, Imani, the woman continued. But I do need to understand, how did you manage to stop 6 girls without anyone getting seriously hurt? Imani hesitated. She wasn't sure how much to reveal. But something in Ms. Carter's expression invited trust. My dad used to be in the Army. He taught me how to stay calm in emergencies, how to use space, momentum, breathing. Ms. Carter's eyes narrowed slightly. So you've had some training? Enough to not panic, Imani said. But I never start anything, ever. There was a long silence. Then Ms. Carter stood. Imani, I'm going to make some calls. I'll handle the rest of this. But I want you to go to the nurse's office, get checked just in case. Then head home. We'll speak again tomorrow. Imani nodded. She gathered her backpack, thanked the assistant principal, and left the room quietly. As she walked down the empty hallway, her mind spun not with fear or regret, but with sadness. She had hoped this school would be different. A fresh start, new faces, a clean slate. Instead, 5 days in, she was already branded. Back at home that evening, Imani sat on the couch with her mother Jasmine, sipping hot cocoa. Her mom had listened patiently to everything. She's lucky I didn't show up at that school, Jasmine said, her hands trembling with anger. 6 girls in a locked bathroom. What kind of school is this? It's not the school, Imani said. It's people. And people are the same everywhere. Her mother paused. That's too heavy for someone your age to carry. I've been carrying it since 3rd grade, Imani replied quietly. Jasmine looked at her daughter for a long moment. Imani wasn't like other kids. She was sharper, quieter. She observed everything. And more than anything, she knew how to protect herself, not just physically, but emotionally. But Jasmine hated that she had to. I'm proud of you, she said finally. But I also hate that you had to go through that again. Imani just nodded. She didn't cry. She hadn't in years. The next morning, things were different. As she stepped off the bus, dozens of eyes followed her. Whispers trailed in her wake. But this time they weren't mocking. They weren't laughing. They were watching. Some with fear, others with curiosity, a few with admiration. Imani walked straight back, unbothered, into the building. In the main hallway, a freshman girl approached her shyly. You okay, she asked. Imani smiled softly. Yeah, I'm good. The girl hesitated. I saw what happened. You didn't do anything wrong. Thanks, Imani said, her voice warm. That girl's name was Zoe. And from that day forward, she followed Imani like a quiet shadow, always sitting near her in the cafeteria, standing beside her at the lockers. Imani never asked her to, but she didn't mind either. For the first time, someone had stepped toward her, not away. Meanwhile, the 6 girls from the bathroom weren't handling things so well. The school's administration launched a full investigation. Each of them was pulled in for questioning. Phones were checked, footage reviewed, And within 24 hours, the truth was confirmed. The girls had planned the ambush through a private group chat. Screenshots leaked. Their classmates turned on them. One girl transferred schools immediately. Another was suspended. Two others were banned from cheerleading. And Madison's parents tried to argue that she was just playing around. But the school wasn't having it. She was suspended indefinitely and forced to issue a written apology to Imani. It wasn't heartfelt, just a few typed sentences. But Imani didn't care. She didn't need their guilt. She had her peace. And that was enough. By third period the next day, Oak Ridge High was buzzing like a shaken beehive. Students whispered in the corners. Phones flashed under desks. And every hallway conversation seemed to start with one word: Imani. Some called her a hero. Others called her a threat. But everyone was watching. In English class, Mr. Bennett paused his lesson on Shakespeare halfway through Act 2. His normally animated voice softened. Before we continue, he said, I want to take a moment to talk about respect. Not just for literature, but for each other. The room went silent. His eyes flicked briefly toward Imani, then away like he didn't want to single her out, but also couldn't ignore the storm swirling around her. No one, he continued, deserves to feel unsafe in this school. No one deserves to be cornered or humiliated. And anyone who thinks that kind of behavior is harmless should ask themselves why they find cruelty entertaining. A few students squirmed in their seats. Imani sat quietly staring at the corner of her desk, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She didn't want to be the topic. She didn't want to be the cautionary tale, the example, the firestorm. She just wanted to be normal. But normal was already gone. Across the room, Zoe gave her a small smile. Imani nodded back. At lunch, Imani hesitated before entering the cafeteria. She stood outside the door, her reflection in the glass framed by buzzing students behind it. Then with a breath, she pushed through. And everything changed. Tables that once ignored her now fell silent when she walked by. Heads turned. Conversations halted mid-sentence. She spotted an empty seat in the far corner, away from the noise, and headed toward it. But halfway there, a boy with shaggy blonde hair, Liam, a junior on the soccer team, stood and pulled out the chair for her. You mind if I sit here? Imani asked, startled. He shook his head. Be my guest. As she sat, Liam added softly, for what it's worth, I think what you did was brave. Most people would have frozen. Imani looked at him, not with suspicion, just surprise. She had expected stares, but kindness. That was new. Thanks, she said, cautious but sincere. Zoe plopped into the seat beside her moments later, slamming her tray down. Two people in front of me said, you're like a black belt ninja from a Marvel movie. They think you know Krav Maga. Imani blinked. I don't. Zoe shrugged. Let them believe it. They were scared straight. That's what matters. Imani smiled, a real one. It was the first time all week her shoulders relaxed. But not everyone was impressed. In the staff lounge, whispers floated with a sharper tone. She's just a kid, one teacher said. Why do we expect her to defend herself like a soldier? Another chimed in, I heard she's been in fights at previous schools. That doesn't sound like a coincidence. Miss Carter entered her presence, silencing the room like a sudden gust of wind. She set her coffee down deliberately. For those wondering, she said coolly, we've reviewed the footage. We've interviewed the girls. We've confirmed the intent behind that ambush. Silence. She didn't provoke them. She didn't escalate. She responded. More silence. And if you're more concerned with how a black girl defended herself than why 6 girls felt entitled to trap her in a bathroom, then maybe the problem isn't her. Nobody said another word. Back at home, Imani stood in front of her bedroom mirror that night. She wasn't admiring herself. She was studying. The way her curls framed her eyes, the calm in her own stare, the weight she now carried in her posture. People looked at her differently now. But was it fear or was it respect? Her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Hey, I'm sorry about what happened. I wasn't part of it, but I saw what they were planning and didn't say anything. That was wrong. You didn't deserve that. Emily from Science. Imani stared at the screen. Then she typed slowly. Thanks for saying that. She didn't send a smiley. She didn't need to. It was enough. 2 days later, an announcement came over the PA system during morning homeroom. This Friday, Oak Ridge High will be holding a student forum on anti-bullying and school safety. We welcome all students to attend and share their voices. Zoe leaned over and whispered, you started that, you know. I didn't mean to, Imani whispered back. But you did. In gym class, something even stranger happened. Brooke, yes, that Brooke walked up to Imani during warm-up stretches. Her steps were hesitant, her eyes downcast. I just wanted to say, she stammered, I didn't know it was going to go that far. Madison said it would be funny. that we were just going to scare you. Imani looked at her evenly. You thought locking someone in a bathroom was funny? Brooke shrank. No, I don't know, I'm sorry. Imani didn't respond. She didn't need to. She turned and walked away. But the most surprising moment came at the end of the week when Ms. Carter pulled Imani aside. There's a leadership program I think you should consider, she said. They're looking for confident students who can mentor others. You'd be perfect. Imani blinked. Me. Ms. Carter nodded. You have something a lot of students don't: resilience. The kind that doesn't break under pressure, the kind that leads. Imani wasn't sure what to say. No one had called her a leader before. A target, yes. A problem, sometimes, but a leader. She walked out of the office that day carrying something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. The forum was standing room only. On Friday afternoon, nearly half the student body packed into the Oak Ridge High auditorium. The folding chairs squeaked. The overhead lights hummed. Teachers lined the back wall, arms crossed, watching carefully. The front row was filled with school administrators, guidance counselors, and even a few members of the school board. Someone whispered that a local news reporter was there too, sitting with a notebook and a pen, scribbling silently. Imani sat in the fourth row. She wasn't scheduled to speak. She didn't want to. She hadn't come for attention. She came because Ms. Carter asked her to. You don't have to say a word, Ms. Carter had told her gently that morning. But your presence means something, especially now. The program began with soft rehearsed speeches. A few student government reps talked about creating safe spaces and respecting diversity. A junior read a poem about kindness. Teachers clapped. Students glanced at their phones. But then someone unexpected took the stage. Zoe, the freshman. Tiny, nervous, shoulders hunched. She wasn't on the list, but the moderator nodded. Zoe walked up to the mic, cleared her throat, and said, My name is Zoe Carter, and I'm a ninth grader here. I want to say something about what happened this week, even though it didn't happen to me. The room stilled. I saw it. I saw the whole thing. I saw 6 girls lock someone in the bathroom, and I saw that someone stay calm while they tried to scare her. I saw her walk out stronger than she walked in. And what I learned is sometimes being strong means not letting people break you, even when they try. Whispers rippled. Teachers glanced at each other. Zoe continued, but I also want to say I didn't do anything at the time. I froze. I didn't call for help. I didn't speak up. And I've been thinking about that ever since, so this is me speaking up. Not because anyone made me, but because I want to be better. I want all of us to be better. When she stepped away from the microphone, the room erupted in applause. Imani felt her throat tighten. It wasn't the speech. It was the fact that someone saw her and chose to stand beside her even now. After the forum, students started looking at Imani differently, not with fear or pity, but with respect. Real respect. Girls she'd never spoken to before nodded at her in the hallway. A boy in gym class asked her for help with his math homework. The art teacher asked if she'd consider joining the mural project. The school counselor invited her to a peer support group she'd never heard of. Doors ones she hadn't even known were closed were slowly opening. And Imani, she didn't push them open. She just walked forward. That weekend, something strange happened. A video appeared online. A short clip, only 15 seconds, taken from a hallway security camera. It showed 6 girls entering the bathroom. Then 20 minutes later, one girl, Imani, walking out alone. The video had no sound, no dramatic music, no voiceover. Just a caption. This is what quiet strength looks like. It went viral. First among students, then parents, then strangers across the state. The school never confirmed who leaked the clip, but it didn't matter. The message landed. News outlets picked it up. Commentators praised Imani's composure. Bloggers called her a symbol of dignity in the face of cruelty. One outlet dubbed her the girl who changed Oak Ridge. Imani hated the spotlight, but she couldn't ignore the impact. By Monday, Miss Carter called her back into the office. We've been flooded with emails, she said, handing Imani a stack of printed letters. From other students, parents, principals, even a senator's office. Imani blinked. Why? Because you reminded people that silence isn't the same as peace. That sometimes when no one's speaking up, the bravest thing a person can do is to stand still and not back down. Imani looked down at the pages. The letters were filled with thank yous, stories of bullying, messages from girls in other schools who felt invisible, from boys who said they'd never thought about what black girls go through until now. Imani's hands trembled, not from fear, but from something she hadn't expected to feel at all. Power. Not the kind that came from fights. the kind that came from truth. Later that day, Madison returned to school after her suspension. Her walk through the halls was nothing like Imani's. People didn't cheer. They didn't whisper praise. They stared. Cold, silent, judgmental. Madison tried to keep her chin up. But her throne was gone. In first period, she sat at the far corner, alone. No one passed her notes. No one invited her to sit at lunch. And for the first time, she felt what Imani had felt every time she walked into a room and didn't belong. When the period ended, Madison waited by Imani's locker. Imani didn't flinch when she saw her. She simply said, "Why are you here?" Madison swallowed, "To apologize." "You already did," Imani said. "Through the school, through your parents, through that typed-up letter." "This is different," Madison murmured. "I mean it now." Imani looked her straight in the eye. "I don't need your apology. What I need is for girls like you to stop making girls like me feel like we have to earn respect." Madison had no response. Imani walked away. That night, Imani sat on her porch steps watching the sky fade into indigo. Her mother came out with a blanket and sat beside her. "You okay?" Jasmine asked. Imani nodded. "I still feel different," she said softly. "You are different," her mom replied, "and that's your gift." "I didn't want a gift, I just wanted peace." Jasmine wrapped the blanket around both of them. "Sometimes peace isn't given, it's built." Imani leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, and for the first time in years, she felt something even stronger than anger. Hope. Imani didn't ask for the spotlight, but the spotlight found her anyway. By Monday morning, the viral hallway clip had been shared over 600,000 times. News outlets reached out to the school. A podcast episode called The Power of Stillness featured her name. Talk shows debated what her story meant for youth culture. And through it all, Imani kept doing what she always did, arriving to school early, completing her assignments with care, sitting quietly during class. But people weren't looking at her the same anymore. They weren't just seeing a quiet girl with a backpack. They were seeing something more, a symbol. And that made Imani deeply uncomfortable. On Tuesday, she was pulled from third period for a meeting in the library. She assumed it was about the peer mentorship program Ms. Carter had mentioned. But when she entered the study room, she froze. 3 adults sat around the table. One of them stood and smiled warmly. "Imani, my name is Angela Martinez. I'm with the State Youth Council." Imani blinked. "I'm sorry." "The what?" Ms. Carter appeared behind her. "It's okay. Sit down. They're here because of the impact your story's having, not just in school, but across the state." Angela continued, "We work with schools and youth leaders to build safer, more inclusive communities. We think your voice could inspire thousands of kids going through what you went through." Imani glanced at Ms. Carter, searching for guidance. "You don't have to decide anything now," Ms. Carter said gently. "But there's a youth summit next month. In D.C., you'd be one of the opening speakers. Travel and stay would be fully covered." Imani's heart thudded in her chest. A public speech. In D.C. She barely liked raising her hand in class. Angela smiled again. "We saw something in the way you handled what happened. Your calm, your restraint, your integrity. We think that should be heard." Imani looked down at her hands. She felt a storm rising in her gut. Not fear, not pride. Something else entirely. Responsibility. She took a breath. Then another. "I need to talk to my mom," she said softly. "Of course," Angela replied. "Take your time." That night, Imani sat at the kitchen table, fingers curled around a mug of tea. Her mom, Jasmine, stirred a pot of stew on the stove. The smell of rosemary and garlic floated through the small apartment. But Imani wasn't hungry. She was thinking. "What if I say the wrong thing?" she whispered. Jasmine turned. "What do you mean?" "At the summit. What if I mess it up or freeze or sound stupid? What if they expect some kind of superhero and I'm just me?" Jasmine walked over and sat beside her. "You don't have to be perfect," she said. "You just have to be real." Imani stared at the steam rising from her mug. "But I didn't ask for this," she said. "No," her mom replied. "But sometimes purpose finds you before you're ready for it." The next morning, Imani made her decision. She would speak at the summit. Not because she wanted fame, not because she craved attention, but because she remembered all the girls who wrote her letters, all the messages that started with, "I thought I was alone." She wouldn't let them stay invisible. Not if she had a chance to be the voice they'd never had. Preparation began immediately. A local speaking coach met with Imani after school twice a week. At first, she stumbled through her own story. She hated hearing her voice echo in the room. She second-guessed every sentence. But slowly her words began to flow with clarity, then rhythm, then conviction. By the third week, the coach leaned back and said, "You've got something people can't ignore." Imani smiled shyly. I don't want to preach. Good, he replied, don't preach, just reach. The school started to notice, not because Imani bragged she didn't, but because her face was now on the school website under student spotlight. Then on a banner in the hallway, Imani Jordan, speaking at the National Youth Summit, April 14th. Suddenly, teachers who never remembered her name were praising her. Students she'd never spoken to offered high fives. Even the principal, who had once called her quietly reserved, asked her to help shape a new student policy on bullying. But none of that compared to what happened the Friday before the summit. That day, in the middle of lunch, Madison stood up. She wasn't seated with her old crowd anymore. She'd been quietly trying to rebuild her reputation, keeping to herself, eating near the windows. But now she walked across the cafeteria past the football players, past the whispering freshmen, and stopped in front of Imani's table. Zoe and a few other students looked up wary. Madison held a folded sheet of paper. I wrote something, she said, her voice shaking. Can I read it to you? Imani raised an eyebrow. I guess, she said coolly. Madison opened the paper. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. I used to think silence was harmless. That if you watched someone get hurt but didn't throw the first punch, it didn't make you guilty. But I've learned that silence is a choice, and that what we laugh at or ignore says more about us than we think. She paused. The cafeteria was still. I'm sorry, Imani, not just for the bathroom, but for every time I saw someone like you and thought you didn't belong. You didn't deserve any of it, and I hope someday I'll deserve to sit at a table like this again. She folded the paper, nodded once, and walked away. Imani sat in stunned silence. Zoe whispered that was real. Imani didn't reply, but her hands slowly closed around the letter, and she didn't let go of it for the rest of the day. The ballroom at the Washington Civic Center was cavernous. Its ceilings soared high above the heads of nearly 1,000 people. From youth leaders to educators, state officials, to students flown in from across the country, the air buzzed with voices, camera shutters, and the subtle hum of anticipation. Imani stood backstage, her knees slightly trembling. A woman clipped a tiny mic to her collar. Another adjusted the light above her. Someone else handed her a bottle of water and whispered, "You've got this." But the noise around her was fading. All Imani could hear was her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She peeked out through the velvet curtain. The stage was bathed in warm light. The moderator had just finished introducing her. A student whose courage and calm sparked a national conversation on what it really means to stand up for yourself and others. Please welcome Imani Jordan. Thunderous applause. Imani stepped into the light, and for a brief, terrifying moment, she froze. She couldn't see faces, just shapes, a sea of them. Phones raised, eyes locked, waiting. She reached the podium. The microphone picked up her shaky breath. She gripped the wooden edge with both hands. Breathe, just breathe. Then from somewhere deep in her chest, a voice emerged, low at first, but steady. When I walked into the bathroom that day, I wasn't thinking about bravery. The room quieted. I wasn't thinking about making a statement or going viral or standing on a stage like this. I was just trying to make it through the day, like so many of us do. A pause. And when the door closed behind me, and I saw 6 girls standing there, I thought, here we go again. Her voice caught. Not from fear, but from memory. I thought, here's one more place I don't belong. One more time I have to prove I deserve space, that I deserve peace. The silence in the room thickened. You could hear someone shift a water bottle, someone else sniffle. Imani pressed on. But what they didn't know, what I didn't even fully know at the time, was that I didn't have to raise my voice or fight back with fists to stand my ground. I just had to remember who I was. The screen behind her shifted, displaying a photo of her sitting quietly in Ms. Carter's office. The same one the school used in the student spotlight banner. I come from a line of women who didn't yell to be heard, who didn't run when the world pushed. My mother raised me to know my value even when others refused to see it. Her voice gained power. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's the stillness, the refusal, the quiet no, that changes everything. Applause erupted again, but this time it was softer, more emotional, the kind that rises out of shared understanding. Imani paused, her eyes scanning the audience. She saw students leaning forward, teachers nodding, a man in the front row wiping a tear. Then she dropped her final line. And if no one else says it to you today, I will. You are enough. You don't have to prove your humanity to be treated like a human. The room exploded. Standing ovation. People rose in waves, clapping, shouting her name. Some students hugged each other. Teachers wept openly. Imani stood there stunned, not because she doubted her message, but because she realized something profound. This wasn't just her story anymore. It was theirs. After the summit, everything changed again. The video of her speech went viral again. Within 48 hours, it had 2.3 million views on YouTube and over 5 million across TikTok and Instagram. Hashtags flooded timelines, where Imani speaks, rest stillness is strength enough already. Celebrities reposted clips. A senator called her message a moment of national reflection. Her inbox overflowed with interview requests, podcast invitations, school appearances. But Imani turned most of them down, not because she wasn't grateful, but because she didn't want to become a spectacle. She wanted her message to breathe, not be chewed up and spat out by a 24-hour news cycle. Instead, she said yes to just one thing. She agreed to speak at 3 local middle schools in her own district quietly without press. Just her a mic and a group of kids who looked like her. Kids who needed to hear that stillness could be power, that survival could be sacred. Back at Oak Ridge, everything felt lighter. Not perfect, but lighter. The teachers gave her respectful nods. Students smiled more freely. Madison still walked with her head down, but she had joined the peer apology initiative, and she hadn't caused another issue since. Zoe. She'd become her shadow-turned sister, the kind who kept gum in her pocket, handed you tissues without asking, and always stood a step behind, not because she was hiding, but because she was watching your back. One afternoon after Imani had finished a talk at a local school, a little girl no older than 11 came up to her. Her voice was soft. Miss Imani. Is sure an no one. Imani knelt. Yes. Be a weapon. The girl whispered, can I be brave like you someday? Imani smiled. You already are. It started with a phone call Imani almost didn't answer. She was in her room on a rainy Thursday afternoon, halfway through organizing flashcards for her biology quiz, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost let it ring out, but something told her to pick up. Hello. Hi, is this Imani Jordan? Yes. This is Trish Callahan, producer at The Silverline Show. We've been following your story. Our host, Mia Silverline, would love to have you on next week live segment Primetime. We think your voice needs to be heard. Imani blinked. The Mia Silverline. She'd grown up watching her mother watch that show every morning while folding laundry. It was huge, national. I'm not sure, Imani said. Of course, we can send you all the details, but it would just be a short interview. 10 minutes, you'd be treated with respect. Imani paused. I'll think about it. That night, Jasmine sat on the couch in silence after reading the email confirmation. Mia Silverline, she murmured, half in awe, half in warning. This isn't a local PTA podcast, baby. I know. They're going to dig, twist your words, try to make you say something headline-worthy. Imani nodded. But what if I can say something true before they do that? Jasmine looked her daughter in the eye. Only if you go in knowing that truth doesn't always protect you. Sometimes it just exposes you more. Imani sat quietly, then whispered, I still want to go. The day of the interview, Imani wore a navy dress shirt and a modest blazer. She kept her hair natural, her edges softly brushed, her hands folded calmly in her lap as she waited behind the set. The lights were bright, the cameras large. Every movement felt like it echoed. Then the stage manager gave the signal. Coming to you, live in 3, 2, cue theme music, cue the applause sign, cue the show. Mia Silverline turned to the camera with her signature smile. Tonight, we're joined by a young woman whose story has inspired millions. You may know her from the viral video, the summit speech, or the thousands of tweets that call her America's quiet warrior. Please welcome Imani Jordan. Applause. Imani smiled, politely nodded. Mia leaned in. Imani, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Mia started soft. How does it feel to know your words have reached so many? Imani gave a thoughtful answer about community responsibility and staying grounded. She'd practiced this, but then came the pivot. Mia's tone changed just slightly. The warmth cooled. Some critics online have said you've become the media's favorite symbol, a kind of brand. That your silence in the bathroom has been packaged as marketable trauma. What would you say to those people? Imani froze. She hadn't expected it this soon. She breathed in slow and deep. I'd say I never asked to be a symbol, but I'm not ashamed that what happened to me made people think about something deeper. Mia nodded but pressed further. And some say you're avoiding hard conversations about race power and what really led up to that moment. Are you afraid to be more direct? Imani's fingers curled in her lap. She looked straight at the camera. I'm not afraid. I'm just careful. Because when you're a black girl, even silence gets misinterpreted. So every word I say carries more weight than it should, and I choose them wisely. The room stilled. Mia opened her mouth, then closed it. The control room let the moment breathe. And then slowly the host smiled again. Well said. After the interview aired, the internet exploded. Clips flooded social media. One comment under the video read, "She's not just brave, she's strategic." That's what they didn't expect. Another 100. Imani Jordan just dismantled every stereotype in under 10 minutes. She was trending for the next 2 days. But not everyone was kind. Some called her too polished, media-trained a pawn. Others posted screenshots of her old photos from middle school, mocking her style, her teeth, even the size of her shoes. Zoe tried to shield her from it, but Imani read them all. And for the first time in weeks, she cried, not because she doubted herself, but because she realized something painful. No matter what she said, some people would twist it. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a spectacle. She almost canceled her next school visit. She told Zoe, "I'm tired of always walking the tightrope, of being brave for everyone else." Zoe looked at her tears in her own eyes. "Then don't go for them," she said. "Go for you. Or for the little girl who asked if she could be brave like you." Imani nodded slowly. That night, she turned off her phone, closed her laptop, and wrote in her journal for the first time in months. At the top of the page, she wrote, "I will not let the world shrink me into something it can digest." The next morning, she stood before 200 students at Lincoln Middle School. No camera crews, no TV lights, just folding chairs, backpacks, and hopeful faces. And Imani Jordan standing tall, not as a headline, but as herself. The auditorium smelled like old wood and fresh paper. It was a Thursday afternoon at Lincoln High, a school in a tougher part of town. The building creaked when students walked, and the heater in the corner hissed every few minutes. But the energy was warm. Students were buzzing with excitement, waiting to hear Imani Jordan speak. She had done a dozen of these now. Small school assemblies, community youth centers, libraries packed with middle schoolers. But this one felt different. Maybe it was the size. Maybe it was the fact that some of the girls here looked exactly like her. Maybe it was because they reminded her of who she used to be before the bathroom, before the applause, before the cameras. Imani took the stage to soft applause. No fancy backdrop, no spotlight, just her handheld mic and rows of folding chairs filled with curious teenagers. She spoke the way she always did, calmly, truthfully, without drama. "I used to think strength meant yelling the loudest, or throwing the first punch," she said. "But sometimes strength is not moving. Sometimes it's saying, 'I'm still here,' even after the world tries to erase you." Heads nodded, a few hands clapped early. But then, a loud crash, followed by a sharp scream. Everyone turned. In the middle of the third row, a boy had fallen from his chair. His face was pale, his body twitching. A girl next to him gasped and dropped her phone. Another screamed his name, "Jaden." Chaos erupted. Students stood, chairs scraped. Teachers rushed forward. Imani dropped her mic and ran. Time slowed. As students scrambled away, Imani pushed through the cluster around Jaden. He was maybe 15. His lips were starting to turn bluish, his eyes unfocused. A seizure. Her father had taught her what to do. She knelt by his side, placed her jacket under his head, and turned him gently to the side. "Give him space," she yelled, her voice booming with authority. "Call 911, shouted a teacher. "I've got him," Imani said. "He's seizing. He's not choking. Don't try to hold him down." One teacher froze. Another cried. But Imani, she stayed solid, a storm in a still frame. She watched Jaden's breathing, checked his pulse, whispered soft words she couldn't remember afterward. Her hands didn't shake. Not once. By the time paramedics arrived, the room was silent. Students lined the walls. Some cried. Some clutched each other's sleeves. But all of them watched Imani, who hadn't moved from Jaden's side. When the EMTs lifted him onto a stretcher, one looked at her. "You the one who stabilized him?" Imani just nodded. The EMT smiled. "You probably saved his life, you know." After the ambulance pulled away, the principal turned to the still gathered students. "We'll cancel the rest of the assembly," she said. But someone from the back shouted, "No." Heads turned. A girl, maybe a freshman, stood up. "We want to hear her finish." Voices joined hers. Dozens of them. "Yes, Shanam. Let her finish. She's real." Imani stood slowly, brushing dust from her knees. She picked up the mic. It squeaked. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just said, "I wasn't supposed to be part of that moment, but I was there. And when something happens in front of you, you don't need permission to help. You just help. Even if you're scared. Even if your voice shakes." The auditorium, stunned into silence just minutes ago, rose to its feet in a wave of applause so loud it echoed down the hallways. The video surfaced within an hour. It showed the fall, the panic, and Imani's voice cutting through it like a beacon. Give him space. Millions watched it. But this time it wasn't a story about stillness. It was about action. The girl who once stood quietly in a locked bathroom had now stepped into a crisis without hesitation and commanded the room with calm clarity. News outlets changed their headlines. From survivor to savior, Imani Jordan acts fast to help seizing student. She didn't just speak, she stepped in. And the hashtags changed too. Maniacs watched her courage in real time. She ran toward the fall. At home that night, Jasmine wrapped her arms around Imani so tight she could barely breathe. You didn't have to do that, her mother whispered. But I did, Imani said, because I was there. Jasmine didn't let go. I'm proud of you, baby. But I'm also scared. Because the more you do, the more they expect. Imani nodded into her mother's shoulder. I know. Do you want to keep going? Jasmine asked softly. Imani pulled back. And for the first time since the story began, she didn't hesitate. Yes. The next morning, she received a call from a woman at the Department of Education. We saw the footage, the woman said. We'd like to invite you to speak at a National School Safety and Student Leadership Roundtable. With the secretary. Are you interested? Imani didn't answer right away. She looked out the window where sunlight streaked across the lawn and thought about Jaden and the bathroom and the girls who never spoke and the boys who didn't know what to do and the teachers who froze and her dad who once told her, you won't always choose the moment, but you will always choose what you do in it. Imani lifted the phone back to her ear. Yes, she said, I'm interested. Imani was back in algebra class when her phone buzzed quietly in her backpack. She didn't check it right away. Her teacher had a strict no phones during lecture rule, and today they were reviewing quadratic equations, a topic Imani actually enjoyed. But when the bell rang and she finally pulled the phone from her bag, her hands froze. It wasn't a message from Zoe. It wasn't from the school. It wasn't even from a number she recognized. The screen read, Unknown call, U.S. Department of Education. Her stomach flipped. She stepped into the hallway and answered. Hello. Hello, Imani Jordan. The voice on the other end was calm, direct female. Yes, my name is Deputy Secretary Lillian Ross. I'm calling on behalf of the Secretary of Education. We've been following your story very closely. Imani's heart pounded. First of all, let me say you've done more for youth advocacy in the past few months than many adults have in a decade. Imani couldn't speak. We'd like to formally invite you to join the National Student Advisory Panel as a special youth delegate. You'd help shape future school policy, anti-bullying measures, student mental health emergency response training. You'd have real input, real votes, real voice. Imani swallowed hard. How long would I be involved? A year to start, Ross replied. Remote sessions, quarterly travel, a scholarship stipend, and full mentorship support. Imani blinked. She could barely keep up with the flashcards in science, and now she was being asked to help shape federal policy. Ross continued gently, as if sensing her hesitation. We understand you're still a student. We'll build around your life, but the offer is real. Imani nodded even though no one could see her. I need to talk to my mom. Of course, we'll follow up tomorrow. Click. Your son phones. The call ended, and everything changed. That night, Jasmine dropped the spaghetti ladle when Imani told her. In Washington, she whispered. Not full-time, Imani said. Remote mostly, but they want my voice on national education policy. Her mom sat down hard at the kitchen table. I don't even know what to say. I don't either, Imani replied. But maybe Jasmine added, this isn't about knowing what to say. Maybe it's about saying what no one else has dared to. The next day, Imani said yes. The official letter arrived in the mail 2 weeks later with an embossed seal and a signature from the Secretary of Education himself. It was framed in the front office of Oak Ridge High the following Monday. Beneath it was a small plaque that read, Imani Jordan, National Youth Delegate, U.S. Department of Education, Stillness, Courage, and Action. Students stared at it between classes. Some took pictures. Teachers pointed it out during homeroom. Guidance counselors began quoting Imani during wellness seminars. But none of that compared to what happened in the teacher's lounge. Mr. Bennett, Imani's English teacher, walked in late after class and saw the usual group of skeptical staff. She's just lucky, one whispered. A media darling, said another. Just wait until she messes up. But Mr. Bennett stepped forward and laid a single sheet of paper on the table. A printed copy of Imani's essay from 2 months ago. The one no one had noticed. The one where she described what it felt like to walk into a room and be expected to shrink. They read in silence. Then slowly even the skeptics fell quiet. Imani's first virtual session with the department was surreal. She logged in through a secure portal from the school library. The screen filled with faces other students from across the country. Some older, some younger, some confident, others nervous, but all of them chosen. And when it was her turn to speak, she started with this. I'm not here because I planned to be. I'm here because something awful happened, and instead of letting it define me, I decided to respond. And now I want to help build something better for everyone else who doesn't get heard. The moderator nodded, and one by one, the other students leaned in closer. That weekend, Oak Ridge hosted its first ever Courage Week. The idea came from Imani, of course, but she refused to let it be about her. It featured story circles, peer-led training on bystander response, workshops on digital safety, therapy dogs, poetry readings, an open mic event called This Is My Voice. On the final day, every classroom in the school paused at 11 a.m. for a minute of silence. Not just for Imani, but for every student who had ever been afraid to speak. Every kid who had eaten lunch alone. Every girl who had locked herself in a stall. Every boy who had been told to man up. And during that one silent minute, Oak Ridge High felt like something sacred. That night, Ms. Carter knocked on Imani's classroom door after hours. She found her at a desk writing something by hand. You never stop, do you? Ms. Carter smiled. Imani looked up, trying to draft a student code that actually means something. Ms. Carter sat beside her. You've changed this school. You know that. Imani looked out the window. I didn't mean to. Ms. Carter nodded. The best revolutions never do. It had been almost a full year since that day. The day the bathroom door clicked shut. The day 6 girls stood between Imani and the exit. The day her silence roared louder than anyone expected. Now she stood in front of the same bathroom door, 3rd floor, Oak Ridge High Hallway C. The paint was still chipped. The flickering light still hummed above. But Imani wasn't the same girl. She wasn't afraid of the silence anymore. She owned it. Miss Carter had called her earlier that week. There's a new girl, she said. 8th grade transfer, smart, quiet, already being targeted. Imani didn't hesitate. I'll come. The plan was simple. Imani would join the new student tour group, then pull her aside afterward. But things didn't go as planned. Because when she arrived 15 minutes early, she heard it. The voice, sharp, cruel, echoing from inside the bathroom. Imani pushed the door open. 3 girls, 1 cornered student, a trembling hand holding a book bag close to her chest. They all froze. The tallest girl turned lips curling into a smirk until her eyes locked onto Imani. The smirk died instantly. Imani didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply stepped forward and said, "Get out." The 3 girls didn't argue. They filed past her without a word. As the door closed behind them, Imani turned to the girl still pressed against the sink. She was small. Her sweater swallowed her. Her braids were messy from being grabbed. Her eyes were red. Are you okay? Imani asked gently. The girl nodded but didn't speak. Imani knelt, meeting her eyes. My name's Imani, she said, and I've been right where you're standing. The girl blinked. I thought she whispered, I thought they were going to post a video. Imani nodded. I know that fear, but they didn't get to finish this story. You did. The girl's lips quivered. Then slowly she asked, did they ever stop doing it to you? Imani smiled soft and steady. They stopped because I didn't. Later that day, the girl joined Imani at lunch. She didn't say much, but she sat beside her, and that was enough. Weeks passed. The new girl, her name was Malia, joined Courage Club. She stood up in front of 20 classmates and read a poem called Unbent. Imani was in the back row. She didn't cry, but she smiled the whole way through. In her final year at Oak Ridge, Imani received a national award for student leadership. Her name was printed in the Washington Post. The Secretary of Education hand-delivered her certificate at a surprise assembly. But Imani didn't talk about the accolades. Not in her yearbook quote, not in her speech at graduation. She talked about the bathroom and the girl in the mirror. And the moment she realized she didn't need to be rescued, she just needed to stop running from her own strength. Months later, as she packed for college, she found the note. Madison's apology still folded in the back of her drawer. She read it again, not with anger, not with pity, but with gratitude, because it reminded her that people can change. And that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strategy. Before she left for college, she returned to Oak Ridge one last time. The school had added a mural near the cafeteria, a painting of students standing shoulder to shoulder. At the center, a girl with curly hair head held high, surrounded by light. The caption below read, "One stood still, the rest moved with her." Imani stood there for a long time, then turned to leave, and didn't look back.